Just 1 week from now, Barack Obama and Xi Jinping will hold their first face-to-face meeting since the re-election of the US president and the installation of his Chinese counterpart. The summit at a retreat in California is being held much earlier than expected. It comes as the United States finds its strategic dominance of the Asia-Pacific challenge for the first time, and with China exhibiting a renewed streak of assertive nationalism. Bonnie Glaser is a senior Asia advisor in the Freeman Chair in China Studies at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. She's a guest of the new USAsia Centre in Perth and of the US Consulate. Bonnie Glaser, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Beijing says the summit should focus on developing a new type of relationship between major powers, quote unquote. What does that tell us about China's intentions, do you think?
Well, I think it tells us that China attaches a great deal of importance to relations with the United States and wants to ensure that the relationship proceeds smoothly, that there are opportunities that are taken advantage of, that differences are managed. When Vice President Xi Jinping, before he became president, came to Washington last year, he proposed the idea of establishing a new type of major power relationship. And I think that Xi Jinping and President Obama want to avoid the pattern of the past when a rising power has challenged an established power that has ended up in conflict.
What do you make of the fact that the leaders of the world's two biggest economies have really wasted very little time in getting together rather than waiting for more traditional opportunities later in the year, that there are significant opportunities or that there are significant problems?
Well, the initial plan was for Presidents Obama and Xi Jinping to meet in September on the sidelines of the G20 meeting. But I think that there's recognition in both countries that they do need to get together to set the tone and the agenda for the relationship. By doing so, the respective bureaucracies and the publics in both countries, and indeed countries around the world, will understand better that this is a positive relationship.
For all that optimism, there has been considerable anxiety, if not tension, in recent months over certain issues, over cybersecurity, for example, over the renewed US military emphasis on the Asia-Pacific. Are these matters that can start to be resolved at this meeting?
Well, I think that the two presidents will be talking about the relationship from the broader strategic level. I don't think that they will be seeking to resolve individual problems. But certainly, cybersecurity is one of the issues that will be on the agenda. President Obama, I think, is especially concerned about the impact on the United States economy of the continuing effort by the Chinese government and the Chinese military to steal U.S. and other intellectual property. And so I think that there needs to be a conversation between the two presidents about how to manage the shared problem of cybersecurity, but to ensure that this is dealt with in a way that there is an even playing field for the United States and China and other countries. This is something that could cause serious tensions in the U.S.-China relationship going forward if it is not resolved.
This question of cybersecurity and the accusations levelled at Beijing in recent days, is the United States simply better at not getting caught, or is China trying to use this 21st century form of warfare to gain a strategic edge over the United States that it cannot hope to achieve by conventional means, on the seas and in the air, for example?
Well, when it comes to espionage, I think that the United States and China are going to continue to try and procure information, gain advantage over the other, and they use cyber space, whatever means are available. I think that it's incumbent upon countries to improve their defenses so that they are not vulnerable to having information stolen. But I think that the real problem is in the economic sphere, where China has a very clear program to steal intellectual property from other countries and companies. This is not something that the United States does, and so China should develop innovation and enhance its competitiveness in a way that does not threaten the economies of other countries and undermine other companies.
Another subject, China's various territorial disputes with its neighbours in the East and South China Seas. Are they simply unresolved historical grievances, do you think, or are they an attempt by Beijing to contest US naval supremacy in the Asia-Pacific, as some analysts suggest?
The territorial disputes are legacies of history that China has with many of its neighbors. China's behavior in the region has, to some extent, been putting pressure on other governments, but there's also been steps that have taken by other countries like the Philippines and the Vietnam that have been seen as somewhat provocative. But the issue with the contention between the U.S. and Chinese militaries is somewhat separate. China is seeking to build what we call anti-access area denial capabilities to try and make it more costly for the U.S. Navy and Air Force to operate in the seas that are close to Chinese shores should there be a conflict.
One final question. Australia's recent defence white paper, you've suggested that Washington would appreciate its tenor, especially Australia repeating its position that it does not have to choose between China and the United States. What do you say then to some Australian analysts, notably Hugh White, that the choice is not in fact Australia's to make, that it will be China's in particular and possibly the United States too?
Well, I think that Australia should not be in a position where it has to choose between the United States and China. But I really think that what Hugh White and perhaps other analysts do not sufficiently appreciate is the effort in both Washington and Beijing to have a more cooperative relationship. The United States knows it can't have an effective relationship with our allies and partners in this region unless we get our relationship with China right. The U.S.-China relationship is critically important. No country wants to see the United States and China in a confrontation in this region. And so I think that, in fact, the United States is working together with Beijing to try and find more interests in common, ways to cooperate on the ground in the Asia-Pacific region, and multilaterally with all the governments in this region.
Bonnie Glaser, thank you very much.
Thank you.